Hello and welcome back to another How It Was Made presented by Continuify. I'm your host, Josh Hines. Today's video is about buyer personas. So I want to add a little bit of clarity about the difference between an ideal customer profile and a buyer persona. Sometimes these get confused and they think they're doing one thing where really they're doing the other, or they're doing the other thinking they're doing one thing. So the big difference between an ideal customer profile and a buyer persona is that an ideal customer profile is more thinking about brand characteristics, where a buyer persona is the type of actual people that you want to target within that brand. So think of now your ICP as the characteristics of the brand. So this again goes back to the company size, location, how many employees they have, how much revenue they have, what software, especially if you're in SaaS, what software is that brand already using that could potentially integrate with your software. And it's a good way to sell it that, hey, you're already using this. Our software integrates with that and you can get even more results. I digress. I do that a lot. But the big difference there is when you think about your buyer personas, they're the actual people that work for that brand. So when building out your buyer persona, it is going to be a fictitious type of person. In the long run, what you could do is you could use data. And once you have a bunch of customers, you could use data of your actual platform users and try to understand and find patterns between your customers of the types of people that are using your platform. Think of buyer personas as types of people. I usually break it out into three, maybe four buckets if you want to throw in the fourth. But typically, especially in a SaaS organization, you're going to be thinking about users, decision makers, and the executives or the board that if there's investors involved. So thinking through those three types of buyer personas, the users are going to be the actual people that are using your platform or using your products or services or whatever you're selling. The decision makers is typically the person that's probably not necessarily going to get into the platform, but they're going to be the person that gets to decide if the budget available is going to be spent on your solution. They're also looking at the bigger outcomes of how is this going to make it so that my team or my employees, if they're using a SaaS platform, are going to be able to get X results faster or easier, or we're going to be able to achieve a capability that we once weren't able to. And then the third bucket, of course, is the executives and the board, if there's one available. Where this is different than the decision makers is that the executives and the board really don't care. They gave that decision maker the budget and they get the approvals of where they want to spend it. Where the executives and the boards usually come into play is when it comes renewal time. They're always looking to see, going to the decision makers, it's a point that's rolling up to them and saying, hey, you spent all this money on this software. Is it actually getting the results that were promised? How are we using this tool? And then they kind of have their opinion and can sway whether or not the software gets renewed. So a lot of times what you'll want to do is you'll want three types of buyer personas. Typically, I do sometimes throw a fourth, because there's your users, but then there's your champion. And typically that champion could be a user or a decision maker, but they're the type of person that really gets your brand. Even within HubSpot, you can designate who your champion is as one of the criteria. It's pre-built into HubSpot that you can be like, this is my champion. This is the person that, again, going back to the beachfront, they got me into this company. They get what I have to offer. And every time I want to have this kind of behind the scenes soundboard of hey, how's things going? Is there something I could say? That champion is probably going to be the person that's going to be able to give you that insight as to what's going on behind the scenes because they want to be able to use your platform. This is great when building out buyer personas. For me, my buyer personas at Continuify are typically chief marketing officers. This can be either a full-time CMO or a fractional CMO, depending on the SaaS company I'm engaging with. Any of your high-level marketing, so VPs, directors. I don't typically engage with specialists or managers. I mean, some managers, sometimes you have SaaS organizations that are on the smaller side that have a marketing manager. But for my advertising, I'm typically targeting those higher level roles because they're also the decision maker and being able to sway where money is being spent. Yeah, I could talk to a user who's man, I have all of this work. I wish I had somebody I can help execute it. But the reality is it's probably more of the CMO conversation of do they have the budget to actually even hire somebody in. So outside of the marketing roles, I also typically work with like CROs, has been a new title that I've been going after, and then sales directors, sales executives on the sales side. I don't get a lot of traction with these guys because usually like they have their ways of working and I can kind of come in and compliment, but it's not one of those like where they're actively looking for people. Like if they're going to hire anybody, it's probably going to be another salesperson versus a rev ops. But you have seen over the last few years salespeople starting to understand that they can leverage a lot of things in HubSpot or integrated platforms like Gong or even Fathom or Fireflies for AI note taking. They can just make their life a whole lot easier, that they're willing to reach out to me and say, hey, like, what can you do to make my life easier? And then the third bucket, of course, is the customer success side of the world. So talking to your CSMs, your customer experience directors, et cetera, where I can kind of come in and help them with their onboarding, helping them predict churn, and thinking through just how to create a better experience when someone says yes, that kind of aligns to like why they reached out to us in the first place with the problem. Sales kind of promise this outcome, and then of course we're working with the success teams to actually achieve that outcome in a very quick way, and then helping them automate like their NPS scores, CSAT scores, and all these stupid acronyms, basically trying to understand how people either like or don't like the platform. And then if they do like it, being like, hey, would you really do it and share a review, and automating all of that. So that's my typical 3 bucket buyer personas. Of course, if you're looking to get into SaaS, you, like I said, want to probably break it down into users, decision makers, executives, and being able to kind of have an idea of like how you want to target those types of people, and like even post sale, like how you want to be able to provide the decision maker with the outcomes they're getting on the platform and kind of package that for them so that when they are going to the board or the executives for that yearly meeting and being asked the question like, hey, like, should we even renew this software? Like, you arm them with all of the information they need to be able to make that decision. Building out all these buyer personas like that also will help you do all of that, but it also helps you at the front end, at the top of the funnel. So knowing who your ideal buyer personas are and the types of people that you want to target is going to be able to make you be able to spend advertising money better, because you're going to have like a very specific type of person that you're going after. You'll know what to say to them, where they're at, even like their communication styles. Like, are they one to actually click on ads? Do they prefer SMS? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer just jumping on a phone call? Understanding all of that criteria for your buyer personas is going to be able to help you with your advertising, your marketing strategy, even your sales offers, and making all of that super crystal clear for the types of different people you want to look at. I'm going to share a tool real quick. So HubSpot has a make my own persona that you actually get access to. You can use this for free even without using HubSpot. And it's going to take you through this 7-step process of creating your buyer personas. If you just click the skip walkthrough mode, you'll get an idea of what a buyer persona looks at the end. Again, like I shared, this is fictitious until you have a good amount of customers that then you can build these personas based off of the patterns that you see with your actual customers, that then you can say, hey, like, this is who we're typically attracting and they're actually buying our platform. How can we find more people like this? That's when buyer personas get a little more nitty gritty and are actually more effective, because you have data and you can kind of understand like what were the traffic sources, like social media, Google, ChatGPT, that kind of allowed them to find you. And then you can be like, all right, like, we need to do better here. Or you can look into the data and see that people found you off of sources that you weren't even familiar with. You're like, hey, like, what would it take for us to get a better presence there? But thinking through building the buyer persona, you can kind of get a visual here of, like I shared, what are their preferred methods of communication? What tools do they need to do to have their job? This could be other related software. Fictitious names, what are their typical job titles? How old they are can make a big difference. Like, the way I would present and speak to a boomer would be entirely different than how I would speak to a Gen Z. Just because like you've seen the social media parodies where you have the older generations trying to talk with the sling, and I bet no cap, et cetera, et cetera. Their education levels, what are their social medias that they use, who do they report to? Again, this could be good for the breakdown of the users, champions, decision makers. Who they report to kind of dictates like what outcomes are expected of them with their job. Where they go to gain information. Again, this could be ChatGPT, this could be Google, this could be their peers on LinkedIn. What are their typical responsibilities? Because then they can help you align with this is their core responsibilities that they got hired to achieve. And this is how my software or my product or service is going to help them achieve those responsibilities a lot faster so that they can get a raise because they did their job quite well. KPIs, how are they measured against their responsibilities and performance? As you're talking to them, what are the bigger goals or outcomes or objectives they're trying to achieve? And what are their biggest challenges? Like, where are they pounding their head against a wall that then you can alleviate these challenges with your product, service, or SaaS solution? So this is kind of like I said, going through, you're building this buyer persona. At the beginning, it's going to be very fictitious. Like, it's going to be like, because you're just launching your brand, you're going to be like, who do I think, based off of my ideal customer profile, who are the type of people that work for those brands that I think would be really good that I could communicate to them that I'm here to help? And then, like I said, as you have the data and can actually unpack the types of people that are actually buying your platform, you can revisit these personas and build actual ones that are based off of data. And that'll just continue to make your marketing, sales, and customer success a whole lot better. But yeah, I hope you like this video. Definitely hit the like button. Like I said, subscribe to this video series. There's going to be a whole lot more of these videos coming out. As always, this is how it was made, presented by Continuify. My name is Josh. And until next time, keep building.